Hello there, welcome or welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, hi, my name is Samantha and this is my channel where I talk all about books. Today I'm coming to you with the start of my end of the year / beginning of the year content. I'm a bit late coming to you with this because there's just been a lot going on and I haven't been in the headspace to film videos. To be honest, it's still a little bit of a struggle, but I am also anxious about the fact that these videos are going out so much later, and I'm getting to the point where I'm like, what's the point of even doing the video? But also I don't want to not do the video. So all that to say, we're here, we're doing it. But because I'm a bit late to the game, I'm going to be combining some concepts that normally I do as 2 separate videos. So in this video today, we're going to be combining my worst and my best books. Normally I would do separate videos, but because of timing, we're going to do them in the same one, and I hope that's okay. And if you're not interested in my worst books, you can skip that. If you're not interested in my best books, you could skip that. I thought we would just combine the two. I will say I generally had a pretty good reading year in 2025 in terms of my ratings and my enjoyment of books. I did get into a few slumps, but generally speaking, it was pretty good. I did a lot of rereads, which I think helped. I feel like I was just pretty good at choosing what I wanted to read and also not being afraid to DNF things if I wasn't enjoying them. So yeah, I don't remember what my overall rating was, but I will have a video coming out soon with all of my stats and also a tier ranking of all the books that I read in 2025, which was 56 books, by the way. I will have that video coming out and you can find out more about stats and stuff if you're interested. Of those 56 books, we're going to be talking about 15 today because I have 5 worst books and I have a top 10 best books. So I think that's a really good sign. The fact that I only have 5 books that I could confidently say are my worst or most disappointing, I'm pretty happy with that. I will say in my top 10, I keep touching them because they're here, but you can't see it. But anyway, in my top 10, I will say that I have not included any rereads because I wanted them to be a fresh top 10. I've got 10 books to talk about as my best books. They're not all 5 stars, but they are all books that I would recommend. And yeah, my worst books, they're not all 1 stars. In fact, I only had 1 star in the entire year. The rest of the ones on here are 2 stars. So not bad, not too bad. But I feel like I'm going to ramble a lot if we don't just get into it. So let's start off with my worst books and we'll end with the good stuff, the best books. So yeah, let's get into my worst books of the year. So obviously the little disclaimer before we get into it, if any of these are your favorite book ever, I am sorry, but we are allowed to have different opinions. I completely respect your opinion. If you like these books, that is wonderful for you. I love that for you. And it's quite possible that you hate my favorite books, and that's okay. But yeah, I mean, no shade to the authors or you if you like these books. The regular disclaimer, you know this, we're all allowed to have opinions here, I hope. Like I said, these are not necessarily the worst books I've ever read, but they were disappointing. So coming at number 5 on the list is one that I'm scared to talk about, but it is Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. I read this in my most recent episode of TBR Tackle, which should be up before this video, I hope. But yeah, I read this in November and I did not enjoy this book. I actually listened to the audiobook of this and it's the Amazon original. So it's a slightly dramatized version, but it wasn't abridged. It was still the full length novel. I thought that the audiobook experience would be much better than reading it physically because I started reading it physically, was struggling, switched to the audiobook. I just did not like this book. If you don't know what Little Women is about, it's about 4 sisters, the March sisters, and basically, if I remember correctly, their family used to be quite wealthy, but then something's happened and they've now lost all of their wealth and they're actually quite poor. And so the girls just spend the whole time complaining about how poor they are. Meanwhile, their mother at the end of every chapter teaches them a life lesson, and it's always the same life lesson, which is, girls, you're not poor. Even though you're poor financially, you have each other. So that makes you rich. And that continues for 400 pages. Almost 500 pages, I think, if I remember correctly. I don't know. I don't understand the Little Women hype personally because I found it boring. I don't know. It just wasn't for me personally. I also have watched the movie and I remember not loving the movie, but maybe I need to rewatch it. But yeah, it was just not the best. Okay, moving on to number 4 on this list, another classic actually. And this is by probably my favorite classic author, seeing as she's the only author who I've consistently read her works. And I've now read all of her full-length novels. That's a book by Jane Austen. It's Mansfield Park. This book is so boring. I'm so sorry, Janie. I really enjoyed all of the rest of her books. I read everything she wrote last year, apart from her short stories. But yeah, all of her full-length novels, I read them last year. I loved them, apart from Mansfield Park. Mansfield Park is just It's so boring. It's so boring. Also, it's weird, and I understand it's a product of its time, but like, it's a romance, as most of Jane Austen's books are. It's a romance, and she falls in love with her cousin. It's a romance between two cousins, and like, they're cousins who grew up together as if they were siblings, which makes it even weirder for me. I'm like, not only are you cousins, you also like are almost brother and sister. Like, this is weird. And also, Fanny Price is just such a stick in the mud. She's the main character. Yeah, she's a stick in the mud. There's at one point, and this takes a big portion of the book, but they're putting on a play at their house. And I don't know, but apparently back in the day, this was a big deal. This was something that was really frowned upon and basically made you look kind of like, I don't know, lower class or something. Like, I don't really know what the big deal was, but they were like, no, this is not acceptable. This is disrespectful to your father who's not home. And like, how dare you put on a play? And this was all like what Fanny Price was thinking. And yeah, she just complained the whole time about this play and was freaking out and crying about the fact that people wanted to put on a play in their house. And I was like, what? Like, they weren't going to open up the house to the public, I don't think. They just wanted to like rehearse and then put on this performance at home. But I don't know. That was a big portion of the book. But the actual plot is that Fanny is like the poor relation of this family. I think it was like 3 sisters, and her mom ended up marrying someone who didn't have a lot of money. So one of Fanny's aunts is like, okay, I want to like help out my sister, so I'm going to take in one of her children, because Fanny's like one of quite a few. I don't remember how many brothers and sisters she has, but she has a few. So yeah, Fanny's aunt is like, I'm going to take one of you guys in to look after you and like raise you properly, like in a nice home with lots of money. So yeah, they take in Fanny, and then they don't treat her very well. And yeah, she falls in love with her cousin, and there's this whole thing about a play. And it sucked. I'm not gonna lie, it sucked. I've liked all of the other Jane Austen books I read, but Mansfield Park, I would never reread, personally. I did not enjoy it. Completely changing gears. Like, Jane Austen, well, I don't know, maybe she would like it these days, but I don't think back in the day she would have been scandalized reading this book. The next one on the list is Cash by Jessica Peterson. I picked this book up on a whim because I saw a video about it on Instagram. Someone was talking about it on a podcast, and I was like, okay, this could be fun. This is a cowboy romance, and it basically follows our main character Molly, if I remember correctly. And essentially, she is kind of estranged from her father. Her parents separated when she was very young. Her mom moved her back to the city, which I think is Dallas. So yeah, she's very much like a city girl, and she is quite happy that way. But her dad unfortunately passes away, and he leaves her the ranch. Her dad owned a ranch. I forgot to say that. But yeah, her dad owned a ranch, and he leaves her the ranch, although she can only inherit the ranch if she lives there for a year. And so she's like, okay, I want this money, because she's actually trying to start her own business. So she's like, I want to inherit this ranch because it's going to make me a lot of money and I can sell it at the end of the year. So she goes to do that. But when she's like at the will reading, finding out about this, there is the like ranch hand. I don't know what he's called, the ranch foreman or something, whatever. His name's Cash, and he actually thought that he was going to inherit the ranch because her dad had told him that he was going to inherit the ranch. So yeah, then he's pissed because he's like, who the hell is this city girl? Who does she think she is? She didn't even know him. Like, why does she deserve to inherit this ranch? So he hates her, and he's like grumpy. She's supposed to be sunshine, but she was the most annoying, obnoxious, selfish character that I've ever read, and I hated her. And like, she was supposed to be sunshine, he was supposed to be grumpy, but both of them I just didn't enjoy. There was a smut scene which actually has slightly traumatized me, and I had like forgotten about it, and then a friend of mine read this at the same time. I don't know why I say a friend of mine like that. One of my best friends read this at the same time, and I forgot about this scene. And then we were out for dinner a couple weeks later, and we were telling my other best friend about the book because we were supposed to all read it together, but one of us didn't read it. So we were telling her about it, and then Izzy reminded me of this smut scene, and I was like, oh my god, I literally had blanked that out because it was so horrifying. And like, even the characters were like, this is kind of weird that this happened, but like, the author included it. So I'm like, why? Like, that was weird. That was weird behavior. Yeah, the book sucked. My main issue with it, to be honest, is actually the pacing. I remember the first 200 pages, it was like 400 pages. The first half, I felt like the pacing was pretty good. Like, things were moving slowly, but it was like a nice slow burn pace. Like, I feel like they were working on the emotional connection. And then the second half, it was just smut all the time. So much smut. And then like, I couldn't feel the chemistry, and I was like, I don't like this. So I'm just a little bit burnt out. Like, I don't need to be reading smut like that. I just don't. That's just a personal preference. You read whatever you want to read. But for me, I'm like, I want a little bit more emotional depth, a little bit more slow burn. I'm okay with a couple smut scenes, but it doesn't need to be all the time, you know? Cool it, calm down. Coming at number 2 on my list is one that's quite disappointing really, because I got this as an advanced reader copy because I thought I would really enjoy it. It sounded like it was going to have some like nice, fun family drama, but it was actually horrifying. But that book is called Favorite Daughter by Morgan Dick. This book has such an interesting premise, but this book basically follows our 2 main characters, and they are sisters. They've actually never met. They share the same dad, but essentially the older one, he was married to her mother and they got divorced when she was quite young. And they got divorced because he actually had a little bit of a side piece going on. So he then goes and marries the side piece and has the younger daughter. And then, you know, fast forward 20 years or whatever, and he passes away. And so the younger daughter, whose life he was actually involved in, she like took care of him in his last days, and they were very close. So she's like, okay, I'm definitely going to inherit all of his money and I deserve it. But it turns out he actually leaves all of his money to his older daughter, who he neglected, as like kind of an apology to try and like make amends, I guess. So he leaves all of his money to her with the caveat that she can only get that money if she goes for 8 counseling sessions with a therapist. The younger sister is a therapist, and so her appointments have to be with the younger sister. So she's going to therapy with her younger sister, whose money she's inheriting, kind of, and they don't know that they're sisters. So I was like, this is going to be messy and drama filled and tense, but like really fun. It was not. It was not fun. This book, I actually couldn't quite finish it because it was just very anxiety inducing to read, which maybe sounds dramatic, but I did not realize that one of the main characters, the older sister, she was an alcoholic, and I did not know that. And I found it very, very difficult reading from that perspective, not because of like my own personal experience or anything like that, but just like it was so stressful, and she made so many just decisions that were just like, I just wanted to grab her and shake her and be like, come on, what are you doing? And so yeah, it just was not really a perspective that I enjoyed being in, and it was stressing me out. It was making me anxious, and like, I don't know if that was like the plan, if that was the author's intent, because I just got to a point where I was like, I can't read this anymore. Like, I cannot be in her head because I'm finding it very difficult to read. So yeah, this one was disappointing more than anything. Like, I don't think it was a bad book necessarily. I think the premise was so interesting, and I think a lot of people would enjoy this book, but I just personally could not be in her head any longer because it was stressing me out. And yeah, I feel like the main reason why it's on this list is because of how it made me feel, which was like really bad. So that's why it kind of made it this high up on the worst books list. Coming in at number 1 is my only 1-star book of the year, and this fully, I feel like, deserves to be here. I understand that a lot of people love this series, and I love that for you, but I personally do not understand the hype. But that is Magnolia Parks by Jessa Hastings. I feel like I missed the boat on this. I remember all of a sudden this became such a big thing, but I had no idea what it was about. I didn't know anything about it. And then, like, in 2024, I heard multiple people talking about it and like being really positive about it. And I was like, okay, I feel like I kind of just need to know. Like, I need to just read it myself and see. So I was like, okay, let's read it. Let's do it. Why not? And I did not like this book whatsoever, clearly, that by the 1-star rating. Essentially, this follows our socialite girly Magnolia Parks, and she has been in this toxic relationship with this guy called BJ Ballantyne? Question mark? His name is BJ. I know that. I remember his name is BJ. Magnolia and BJ have been in this toxic relationship, but something happened. They were in like a healthy relationship, but something happened. They broke up, and now, despite the fact that they are no longer together, he is actively sleeping with like as many other women as he can, it seems. And she is like going out on dates and like kind of in a relationship with somebody else. They still like sleep in each other's beds every night. They are still like, clearly they have feelings for each other, and it's just basically 400 pages of them hurting each other, but then being like, oh my god, I love you so much, like I don't know where I'd be without you, but like also I'm gonna continue to hurt you again and again and again. And everyone else around them is saying like, oh my god, they're so destined to be together, and I just don't get it. I don't understand it, and I feel like I don't enjoy books typically where people are like, they're destined to be together, but there's nothing to back that up. So like, for example, I read a different book this year called The Favorites by Lane Fargo, which a lot of people loved, but I think, again, this was a toxic relationship. I think it's when it's a toxic relationship, but people are like, they should still be together, and I don't get it. Again, that was a toxic relationship, and everyone was like, wow, their chemistry is electric and they have to be together, like they're destined. And I just don't see it. And it was the same with Magnolia Parks. Like, I just couldn't get behind the relationship. I was like, girly, move on, like get away from this guy, he sucks. And like, there are other guys around you who you could date instead who are probably a better match. So yeah, It's just, I guess, a personal preference that I just don't understand the toxic relationship thing. I don't see why they would be together. I don't see why they have to be together. I think they'd be better off without each other. So yeah, I had a really bad time reading that. And actually I read that during one of my byeeee tackle episodes. So I'll link that one up in the card in case you want to go check it out. All right, but that brings me to the end of the worst books segment. So that's good. We've got that out of the way. So yeah, like I said, none of those books apart from Magnolia Parks were like god awful, but some of them were just disappointing. And yeah, those were the worst books I read in 2025. Let's now chat about my top 10 best books of the year. Before we get into them, I have like a little stat for you. So in the year of 2025, I only rated 7 books 5 stars. I gave out like quite a few, like 4.25, 4.5, 4.75, but only 7 books got a full 5 stars from me. And of those 7 books, only 1 book was not a reread. So that's an interesting little fact for you. I think that made it super easy to choose my favorite book. Like I already knew what my favorite book of the year was, but like looking at those and knowing that like this was my only new 5-star in the year, I was like, it absolutely has to be this book. Stay tuned for number 1. But coming at number 10, we have The Spell Shop by Sarah Beth Durst, which I think I actually only gave like a 4 or 4.25, but I did really enjoy this one. And also I wanted to have a top 10 without any rereads. So yeah, it's a little bit lower on the scale, but I still really enjoyed this one. If you don't know what this book is about, this is basically a cozy fantasy with a little bit of romance in it. This follows our main character, Keela. Keela is a librarian working in the Great Library in like the capital city of this land. But unfortunately, there's a little bit of turmoil and she ends up fleeing the library with as many books as she can carry and also her talking spider plant, Kaz, who is my favorite character I read this year, potentially. I love Kaz. Kaz was the perfect comedic relief during this book. Like, love him. But yeah, she ends up fleeing and moving to this small island, which she actually used to live on with her parents back when she was a child. And her childhood home is still there. So she ends up going and moving back into her childhood home. And basically, in the land where she lives, magic is outlawed unless you are a sorcerer. But she happens to have all of these like magical books with her, which she took from the library to like protect them. And the island that she goes back to is not doing particularly well because it used to be that sorcerers came to visit once a year to protect the island from like these magical storms that happen and like make sure that everything is still growing prosperously. But that has kind of fallen by the wayside. So Keela is determined to help everyone out in this community. So she starts making these little spells and she disguises her house as like a jam shop, but really she's selling spells alongside the jams. And she also meets her neighbor and has a little bit of a romance with him, potentially. It was like such a warm hug. I loved the found family. I loved just the like slow pace of life. Like it was so fun. It was so fun. It was so funny. I will say I also read The Enchanted Greenhouse this year and I did not enjoy that. But I've kind of learned about myself that I mainly like the first book in a cozy fantasy series. And every time I try and continue on, like it just doesn't capture the same magic and I don't enjoy it. So I feel like I need to give up on like the series aspect or just give it more time. I still really enjoyed this one and I think of it very fondly. Coming at number 9 is another book from my most recent episode of TBR Tackle, and that is Chain of Gold by Cassandra Clare. This is a book that I was putting off for like literally 5 years. I bought this in 2020. I pre-ordered it and then I just did not read it because I was like, it's been too long since I reread The Infernal Devices, so like let me reread that first. Then I reread that and finished that like at least a year ago, and then I still did not pick this up for the longest time. But I cannot believe it took me this long because I really enjoyed this. In this book, we were back in the Shadowhunter world. So I'm going to try and like talk about this with as few spoilers as possible. But this is like the 4th series in a much wider series. So yeah, it's kind of hard to talk about without spoiling it. And basically like I wouldn't recommend reading this if you haven't read The Infernal Devices. Like read that first before you read this. But yeah, this is following the children of various characters from The Infernal Devices. And essentially they are living in London in the late 1800s or early 1900s. I can't remember. That sort of time. There's kind of been a long period of peace because basically Shadowhunters or demon hunters, demons exist. Shadowhunters are the ones who kill the demons. They're also vampires and werewolves. If you've literally like never heard of a Shadowhunter book before, that's the basic premise. But yeah, there's been this long period of peace because there haven't been a lot of demons around. And so these like teenagers who we're following, they've kind of had a bit of a sheltered life for a Shadowhunter because normally Shadowhunters have like a lot of demon fighting going on. And so they're just like going to balls, going on picnics. It's like a little bit of a Bridgerton vibe without like the raunchiness because obviously they're teenagers, so there's no raunchiness. But yeah, it's kind of got like that sort of vibe, and there's like talk about courting and like propriety and stuff like that. So if you enjoy that aspect of Bridgerton, I think you'll really like this series. I've only read the first one, so I don't know about the rest of the series, but yeah, this one. And then all of a sudden, all of these demon attacks start happening, and it's like about them trying to like figure out how to do this again and like fighting demons, and all with the backdrop of like historical London. And it's a really fun time. I really enjoyed this book and I really need to continue on, but I just need to get the next one from my library, and I keep forgetting because I just never have my library card with me. I really need to get better about that. I really enjoyed this one. I think I gave it 4.5, and I will definitely continue on with the series. It was a fun time. Coming in at number 8 on my list, we have Circe by Madeline Miller. This is another one that I had been putting off for such a long time. I was interested in this like from the very first time I saw it, like when it came out, but I just never picked it up because I think I was just intimidated. I had a feeling this was going to be like quite a literary kind of slower paced book, and it definitely is, but I still really enjoyed it, and I just can't believe it took me so long. But yeah, I was intimidated, but I finally read it and I loved it. This follows Circe, and she is a witch and she is exiled to an island. But yeah, Circe is like living there by herself, just kind of making this island her home, and she is frequently visited by sailors. And on one of these visits, the ship that comes in actually has Odysseus on it, and so they kind of form a connection, and it's really just that story. And Circe is descended from the gods, so she's like obviously magical as well, and she like is just very fond of humans. Seeing her sort of observations of humans and humanity is like a really interesting perspective. It's just beautifully written. It's quite slow, I will say that, but I think it was a really good read. I actually also read The Song of Achilles this year, and I much preferred Circe, so I liked Song of Achilles as well, but Circe takes the cake for me. I thought it was beautifully written. I really enjoyed it. I would definitely reread this at some point. Coming at number 7 on my list is one that absolutely had to make the list, and that is Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins. I feel like I'm revisiting a bunch of like young adult stuff that I used to read when I started my channel, which is kind of fun. But yeah, Sunrise on the Reaping came out in March. I read it. I sobbed. I also loved it. If you don't know, this is the new prequel in the Hunger Games series. I'm not going to explain the plot of the Hunger Games because if you don't know what the Hunger Games is, I don't know where you've been. Yeah, this follows Hamish's story and the second Quarter Quell. And I feel like this book was so anticipated for me because I've spoken about this multiple times, but when Suzanne Collins announced in 2020 that there was a prequel coming out, I thought it was going to be this book. And then it ended up being The Ballads of Songbirds and Snakes, which I enjoyed, but I don't think is the best book ever. And then I thought, okay, she's released that. We're never going to get this book. And then when this book was announced, oh my god, I was so excited. And yeah, I just could not wait to have this book in my hands. For me, it did live up to my expectations. Like, I really enjoyed this. I think some people will say that it's like fan service. You do have some cameos of characters who you met in the original Hunger Games trilogy and stuff like that. But I think, I don't know, it was gruesome and it was horrifying. But it was also just like, I don't know, I just loved it. And I've always loved Hamish as a character, so getting to see more of his backstory was just, I loved it. I loved it so much. Don't really have too much else to say about this. I have a whole reading vlog where I reread The Hunger Games, and I also read this for the first time. So if you want to see me crying, you can go check that video out. Moving on to number 6 on my list is Paladin's Grace by T. Kingfisher. This book, I didn't know how to feel about it for the longest time because I loved so many aspects of this, but there's one thing in this book that I hate. Like, I actually hate it because this is a cozy romance book set in a fantasy world. I wouldn't really call it like a romantasy, even though technically it kind of is, but like it's mainly a romance book. There's also a bit of like a mystery aspect to it, and it's set in a fantasy world. But what I hated about this is that there is a horror element, which I did not realize because nobody ever says that. Everyone just says that it's cozy and sweet and fun, and it is all of those things, but it also has something that's just so disgusting in it. And like, I really struggled with that, and I like went back and forth on like what to rate this for the longest time, but I finally settled on a 4.5 because whilst I hated that aspect, I loved everything else about this. Like, the rest of this book, perfect, but that horror element, like, throw it in the bin. Like, why was it there? I hate it. But also, if it didn't exist, then there wouldn't have been the mystery element, and then there wouldn't have been any reason for these two characters to meet and interact. So kind of needed to happen. But anyway, side tangent. This book follows our main characters, Grace and Stephen. Grace is a perfumer who's kind of like rebuilt her life in this town. She's like relatively new to the town and she kind of is fleeing from her past. And Stephen is a paladin, which is kind of like a knight that works for a god. But Stephen's god died a few years ago, and so he's been carrying around a lot of guilt and like he doesn't really know what to do with himself. And so their paths cross. They kind of have a really awkward first encounter, which was so fun. I actually love an awkward first encounter in a romance book. Like, I feel like some people find it cringy or like annoying, but I've realized that I find it hilarious. Like, I just love it. So yeah, they have an awkward first encounter and then they keep on running into each other and they have these growing feelings, but they're both kind of like denying it because of different reasons. And then yeah, they kind of both get embroiled in this conspiracy mystery situation. It was honestly lovely. Like, it was so lovely. I loved reading it. It was fun. I was kicking my feet. And then the horror aspect happened and I hated that, but the rest of it is so good. So yeah, this, even though I had my issues with it, this still makes the favorites list because I don't think about the horror. I just think about the fun times I had and I pretend like the horror didn't exist. So yeah, I will continue on with the series, but I'm a little bit scared just because I don't do horror. And I know T.K. Fisher also writes horror books, but I thought this was just cozy fantasy romance. I didn't think it was also horror. Still makes the list. I still had a great time. I feel like I'm critiquing every book as I go. And like, this is supposed to just be my favorites. But as I said, I only gave one of these books 5 stars. So anyway, coming in at number 5 on my list is Wild and Wrangled by Lila Sage. This is the 4th and I think final book in the Rebel Blue Ranch series, or this is the final book for now. I loved this book. I was kicking my feet. I was giggling. I had the best time. This is the cowboy romance that I actually really enjoyed. And it's a second chance romance, which is normally not my favorite, but I did really enjoy it. And I don't really want to talk about which characters it follows because even though it's not a spoiler, but like if you are going to start at the beginning of Rebel Blue Ranch, then like I don't want to tell you who these 2 people are, but it follows these 2 people and it's second chance. There's some like forced proximity and yeah, it's just the whole series is set in this small town. I can't remember what the name of the town is called, but obviously there is Rebel Blue Ranch. There's a ranch and there's a family that lives on that ranch, and then these characters are connected to that family. And yeah, I loved this. I was kicking my feet. But I will say Lost and Lassoed, which is the 3rd book in this series, is still my favorite by far, but I did really enjoy this one. Coming in at number 4, we have a big surprise, and that is a classic. I read a lot of classics this year, actually, because I read all of Jane Austen's books, which I already spoke about. But yeah, coming in at number 4, we have Northanger Abbey by Jane Austen, which I did not know what to expect because I feel like I have not heard that many people talk about this one. Like, I feel like most people talk about obviously Pride and Prejudice and then Emma, Sense and Sensibility, Persuasion. Like, those 4 I hear a lot more about than Mansfield Park or Northanger Abbey. Mansfield Park, I agree. Like, let's pretend like that one doesn't exist. But Northanger Abbey, I feel like is being slept on because I loved this book. This is essentially Jane Austen's take on a gothic satire. And obviously there's also like a romance within it because it's Jane Austen. This basically follows our main character, Catherine Morland, and she goes to Bath to stay with a family friend. And she ends up falling in love with this guy called Henry Tilney, who invites her to come and stay at his family's estate, which happens to be an abbey, which in a lot of gothic novels, like weird things happen at abbeys. So she is a big fan of gothic thrillers and she's like, yes, I want to come stay in this abbey. Like, let me come and see what it's like. So she goes to stay there and she's convinced that like terrible things have happened there. The family's keeping a secret. Things have gone wrong. And like everything that happens, like obviously she's just like building up in her mind because of the thrillers that she's read, but like actually none of it's true. And at the heart of it is just like a romance. And so like anything spooky that happens is very quickly like, no, like there's an actual logical reason for that. And like she was being ridiculous. I really enjoyed this one. Like, I really, really had a great time with this. I gave it 4.5. And yeah, like I said, I feel like people are sleeping on this book because it's wonderful. Like, it has a lot of ratings, but I still feel like more people need to read it, especially for spooky season. Like, obviously it's not scary because everything that she thinks is happening is not actually happening. Like, she's made it up in her head, but it does still have that vibe. Like, there is a moment where you're like, oh, is this actually happening? Like, I don't know. I loved it. I don't think I did that book justice in my description just now, but like, it was a really good time. I would highly recommend it. Okay, coming in at number 3 on my list is actually kind of 3 books, but I can't choose my absolute favorite. It's kind of like representative of the series as a whole, but I'm gonna hold up books number 5 and 6. But that would be the byeeee Revelation series by Michael J. Sullivan. This is the bind-up of books 5 and 6, which I would say are 2 of my favorites. I really liked books 3, 5, and 6, which are Nifron Rising, Wintertide, and Persepolis. I feel like maybe Nifron Rising is my favorite. I don't know. But yeah, I read this entire series this year, and I honestly loved it. I did not have the best start. The first book I did not enjoy that much, but as the series went, like, it just got better and better, apart from book number 4, which we won't talk about. But yeah, all the other books got better and better, and I just had the best time. I had such a fun time reading this series. I read it all in 1 year, which is like unheard of for me, and I had a great experience doing that. This follows our 2 main characters, Royce and Hadrian. Royce is a thief and Hadrian is a mercenary, and they kind of have teamed up and formed this group, which is just the 2 of them, but they call themselves the byeeee. Essentially, they carry out tasks for scheming nobles, like stealing things or maybe unaliving some people. They kind of complete these tasks for scheming nobles for a hefty price. And in the very first book, which is called The Crown Conspiracy, they become embroiled in this conspiracy because basically they're framed for the murder of a king. And the series really builds from there. So yeah, in that first book, you don't realize how impactful that's going to be for the rest of the series, but it is really what kicks off the overarching plot. I loved this. And this is actually the start of a 20-book interconnected series, which is insane. But yeah, there are like 5 series within this series, and they're all interconnected if you want to read them all. So I will at some point. But yeah, I finished the byeeee Revelations, which is apparently where you should start. I have the reading order saved somewhere, and I will read everything at some point because I did really enjoy this. And also, it's funny. I forgot to say that. It's funny. It has action. It has romance. It has everything you could possibly want. I loved it. Would highly recommend. Okay, we are down to our last 2. So coming at number 2, we have a romance book, and that is Savor It by Tara DeWitt. I bought this book on a whim. I had heard people talk about it, but not that many. But I loved the cover because, like, how could you not? I love the colors there. And I was in a bookshop with my friend. I bought this book and I literally started it on the train on the way home, which never happens. I'm collecting things and then read them eventually. But yeah, this was like the first time in ages where I went to the store, I bought the book, I started the book immediately, and I loved that. I really need to finish my entire TBR so I can start doing that more regularly, more intentionally. That's a whole tangent for another time. I really enjoy this book. I've never read anything else by Tara DeWitt, but I definitely will be. I already have the 2nd book in this series. Planning to read that at some point soon, maybe in February. But yeah, I'm now like interested in the rest of her books as well because I really enjoyed her writing style. I'm very picky with my romance, but I really enjoyed this. This follows our main character, Sage. She lives in this small town. She's a teacher, and it's currently the summer, so she's got a lot of spare time. And she kind of lives on this big property, and so it's not like a farm, but there's a lot of, like, she tends to some flowers, and her neighbors on the next door property are away for the summer and they're renting out their house. So she also helps out with, like, taking care of the new tenants and stuff like that. And the new tenants happen to be Fisher and his niece. Fisher is a Michelin star chef, but he's experiencing some career burnout, and so he's kind of been sent to this small town to help set up a new restaurant and kind of get his spark back for his job, kind of have a fresh start for his niece as well, because unfortunately his sister passed away, so he's now taking care of her. She's been struggling. So yeah, they are in this small town and they are living in the neighbor's house, so he and Sage cross paths. And Sage has kind of been going through a tough time, and she really feels like she needs a win. And every summer there's this, like, competition in the town, and so she and Fisher pair up to take on this competition and hopefully win. And I just loved the small town vibes, and also, like, the slow pace of life. Like, you might notice that this is a theme that I've really been enjoying recently, but yeah, it's just like, I think everything is so fast paced, especially if you're living in a city and maybe working in certain industries. Like, everything's just go, 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 go. And I feel like it's really hard to take a step back and be like, I actually want to just, like, slow down, enjoy my time. And, like, I don't know, I've really been enjoying that kind of theme in books. I loved this. I loved this so much. And the romance was great. I loved it, and I will definitely be reading more books by Tara DeWitt in the future. Okay, and coming in at number 1, my best book of 2025 by far, my only new 5-star, was Hello Beautiful by Anna Napolitano. And this is kind of funny because this has gone full circle, this whole video, because this is inspired by Little Women. It's like a Little Women retelling. And obviously we started with Little Women and now we're kind of ending with Little Women, but this is so much better. Like, read this. Don't bother with Little Women. Read this book instead. This book follows the Padavano sisters. There are 4 of them. They're a very close-knit family, family, and essentially the oldest sister, Julia, meets this guy called William Waters at university, and they have a relationship, and they kind of bring William into their family, and he had a really tough childhood. He doesn't really have a relationship with his family, and so it's all about his connection with the family and like the impact that they all have on each other, whether it be positive or negative. It's got a lot to do with family. It has a lot of found family themes, which is not normally what I'm looking for, but I don't know, it just hit so hard in this book. And this is gonna sound crazy, but I love the men in this book, which is insane, I know, but the men in this book are just like the most wholesome, supportive men to each other. Like their friendships, normally I'm all about female friendships, like that's all I care about, but the male friendships in this book are incredible. Oh my god. And like basketball is a big part of this book, not like overwhelmingly so, don't worry, but like William plays basketball, his basketball team are like really important to him. Honestly, she made me care and made me care about these boys, about their basketball. Like I was invested, and I feel like every sister had her own personality and was well fleshed out. The two older ones are Julia and Sylvie, and obviously Julia's quite a big character because she brings William into the family, but Sylvie's also very much a main character. They both have very distinctive voices, and yeah, I loved, well, I was gonna say I loved both of them. I didn't. I hated Julia. Like one of these tab colors, I can't remember which one it is, but I think it might be green. Whatever one it is, it's every time Julia was a bitch. I was like, okay, tab. Julia's being a bitch again, tab. Because she was pissing me off. Did I not do a key? I don't think I did a key, which is so annoying. I don't think I'm doing this book justice. This book was beautiful. It is tragic. It's like, it's very sad at the same time. Like you will probably cry, but it is so beautiful. I'm gonna cry just thinking about it. I loved it so much. I want to reread it. Not right now, but at some point I will be rereading this, and hopefully it stands up, and then I can put this on like one of my all-time favorite books list. But yeah, this is so shocking to me because I never read like literary fiction or contemporary fiction. I'm not quite sure what category this falls under. I don't typically read it or enjoy it, but this was just incredible. Like if you read any of the books I recommended, please read this book, please, because I feel like not enough people have read it. I don't think I've ever seen this on BookTube, but like read it, please. It's so good. Those are all of my best and worst books of the year. I hope I did these books justice in talking about them. I feel like I find it very difficult to talk about the books I love for some reason. Like I'm not the best at explaining them, but like they're all amazing. Like you should read them. And I'm much better at talking about books that I disliked because for some reason that stands out more in my mind. Maybe that's something to think about and like work on, remembering the good things more than the bad. Either way, those are all of my best and worst books of 2025. Please let me know down below what your favorite books were of 2025 or your worst. You could do both. Maybe give me a top 3 and a bottom 3. Whatever you want to do, just let me know what you read last year. I would love to know. But yeah, that's all from me. So I hope you liked this video. If you did, please give a thumbs up. If you're new here, feel free to subscribe down below, and I'll see you very soon with another video. Bye.